I forgot to cut my hair this morning. That's what what happens when you're quarantined for so long. I forget that anybody's actually going to see me. Hey, everybody. Can just working out some technical details here. Can everybody hear me? Oh, look, I'm seeing some questions. Hey, Earl. Hey, Maxo. Who else is there? Let's see. Fed Boss. Awesome. Good. You guys can hear, you can see okay. Here are my drums. Yeah, I might move this a little bit to the side here. Vivian, feel free to laugh at my jokes. Make me okay, cool. So and if anybody's having trouble, you can let me know in the chat here. I think that everybody's on has already opened the link, right? Great. Oh, right. To see. All right. Okay. Yeah, there should be a chat window and a video window. Oh, good. Glad. Hi, Connor. Glad that you figured it out. All right. So let's see. Maxo already asked a question here. Oh, jam. Yeah. What do I do to warm up? I used to not really have very many actual warm up. I used to not really warm up at all, and these days, I have something that I do which is more or less just a stretch. I'm trying to stretch out these muscles here, and it's really simple. It's just pretty much just this. You ever done that one before? I'll just do it a little bit right now, actually, too. These muscles here are pretty major, like drumming muscles. These forearms, and then also the one that's kind of in your hand here. This one, Ralph Peterson used to call this the drumming muscle. You see that? So yeah, definitely doing this will help. Even just for my hands. Couple little stretches like that. I also do one more, which is for my shoulder, because I specifically kind of have a kind of a bum shoulder, which is just stretching it like this. So I'm feeling the stretch here, all through here. Can you guys see that? And then just trying to be. It's probably not ideal. Let me put this back so you can see me a little bit easier. Yeah. So this is the stretch here. There we go. You could do it up high, and you can do it in the middle. And I'm not doing a very good job of relaxing the rest of my upper body when I do it, but that's what I would try to do generally. Might be a little tricky to look at the screen while I'm doing that. And then, of course, I would do it with the other side as well. So that's one of the ways that I would warm up kind of in a physical way. And of course, there are more drumming related warm ups that I would do. And actually, there's going to be some of these which are on Patreon already. I can even tell you, but there's some like towards the beginning, and you guys can all access all of these videos. So I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's something about warm-ups, I believe. And it's probably within the first 3 or 4 months of when I started Patreon. Basically, it has to do with creating a sticking pattern that I can reverse. So I would start with like a rudiment that I would like to work on. So, for example, somebody give me a rudiment to start with. Let's see, Maxo. Maxo, you asked this question. So give me one rudiment, and then I'm going to design a warm up exercise using this rudiment. Flam tap, okay. Flam tap. All right, let's do a flam tap. So flam tap. If I use a pad, is that okay for everybody? You're gonna be able to hear and see on a pad too. May as well just use a pad right now. All right, so that's a flam tap. So here would be my exercise, like something like this. So do you see how it reversed after, I guess you could call it 1 bar? You could do it 2 bars if it's in eighth notes, right? 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So I'm going to actually move this snare drum just a little bit, so it might be a little easier for you to see that. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so I just put some flam taps together, and at the end, I played something that would reverse the hands, which were 4 notes in a row, and that's how I went to the left hand lead. Then next step, which is very important, is that I would displace that rhythm and practice it that way as well. So for example, let's start on the eighth note before 1 that we're anticipating, right? So 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So usually that's not going to be as technically hard or physically hard, but it's going to be more challenging mentally, because you're going to need to really place that, that sequence, but off of the beat. You're thinking off of the beat. So a little faster, that sounds like this. Okay. If I count it off, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in the same way, I would displace it ahead of the beat. I would displace it forward. So I would start on the end of 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. And I would also start it on other places of the beat as well. Beat 2 and a 2. This is what it sounds like if it starts on beat 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And of 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it really has a different character, it has a different character to it when it's starting on different places of the beat. So, with warm-ups, that method of displacing is really always something that, that my go-to. It's always on my mind. So, the first thing that I would do would be, again, to come up with a rudiment. And then after you get the rudiment, you just, you can just play that rudiment, and then reverse your hands, play it reversed, and then that's your pattern. If I was doing a paradiddle, it'd probably be something like this. Sorry, you can't see me. It would probably be something like this. So I'll start with a right paradiddle. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Okay. So I'm reversing it by doing the right, left, or left, right. I'm reversing it with just one group of 4 single strokes. And then, that would be displaced as well. So if I was going to displace that on the next note after 1, let's say the 8th note, the and of 1, 1, 2, right? So that's where you get, stuff that sounds like this. Got. Sorry. If I was going to put that on the drums, 1, 2, got. Just making sure you can see. You can see that? 1, 2, 3. All right. So the idea again is it's not just speed; it's also really understanding and being able to hear the rhythm off of the beat in a syncopated way. So that I usually those consist of warm-ups to me, and if I can get to a place where that challenges my hands as well, that's great. I would start on 1. It would definitely challenge my hands, and then when I start displacing, it really challenges more my brain. Let's see here. Look at Alex. Hey, Alex, how's it going? I'm going to read your question in a second, Alex. I do the same with paradiddle 3 times, followed by paradiddle to reverse the sticking. Yeah, exactly. Right. You can do exactly right. That's right, Earl. That's exactly another way to do that. And that's using a paradiddle diddle would be your rudiment. And then displace it all 8th notes. Sure. Yep. You can displace it all 8th notes. You can also just displace it 3 or 4 times. I'm not one to say that you have to do every single displacement. If you do 3 or 4, you're going to really get the gist of that. So I'm going to go to Alex's question here. I did not study with Gary Chapin. Do you mean Gary Chaffee? Is that who you're thinking of? You might be thinking of Gary Chaffee. I don't know what you mean, Connor. Ari, when playing odd times in fast tempos, for example, airs and loops, do you think more like a clave 4/4/3 or like 11 tuplet? Okay, Alex, have you seen the video on Patreon about that tune? I'm waiting for your text response here. Because if you haven't, you should just go ahead and watch that, because I think I explained that pretty with in pretty decent depth. It's there. I don't remember this. Viv, do you remember the title of that one? It might just be called Arrows and Loops. There also, you could also look for one that's really about warm-ups too, or hand technique. I think it's gonna cover what we've just been talking about as well. Oh yeah, great. Okay. No, I'll check it. Good. Yeah, check it out because it's there. There's a lot, there's a lot of information there. I guess I've been doing this for just about 2 years. So figure, 3-4 videos per month for 2 years. There's a lot of stuff. But that is, something that's going to directly answer that question for you, Alex. So probably some of the people here have already watched it. I won't go over it again, but check it and then let me know if you don't understand something. Jim Chapin and Gary Chaffee. There you go. You're getting it right. Yep. Right. Okay. So we're gonna go in the high Heaths. Am I saying that right? Heaths. Heaths. How do you go about transcriptions? Okay, that's a great question. So, there are a lot of ways to do transcriptions, and I have definitely, transcriptions are a part of my Evan. Is that your actual name? You mean? Oh, Evan. Okay. Yeah. So basically, I used to transcribe a lot, and the way that I would do it, I would take either a transcription of time, a drummer playing time, or a drummer playing a solo. And I think I started first with time. My very first transcription, I believe, was Airto on that Chick Corea record. It might have been La Fiesta. I think that was it. And I just really liked how he played, six, and it was like a swing, or I don't know, kind of a straight eighth-y feel. So yeah, I transcribed the whole thing. And then after transcribing it, of course, there was a lot of listening to it during the transcription process. And so then I would learn to play it. So I learned to play it, and then I played it along with the record. And then, I did a lot of other transcriptions after that, but the way that I started was exactly that. I would transcribe maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes, a few choruses of somebody playing time or somebody playing a solo. So then I learned a few things, and so the things that I learned actually made me start doing it later, differently. So instead of transcribing like full transcriptions that were a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes long, I started to just transcribe things that I thought were kind of the most valuable things that I wanted to learn. And then for the rest of it, I would just listen to it over and over again. So, for example, like Chick Corea's solo on La Fiesta was one of the things that I transcribed. But in order to transcribe it, I would actually have to listen to the solo a lot of times. But you can actually do that without transcribing it. Just listen to it a lot of times. Try to memorize the feel. Try to memorize what's happening in the music, not just the drums, but all the parts. And I feel like that's probably the most valuable part of transcribing. What you want to do as a transcriber, your goal is to actually absorb the information that is on the record, right? That's what you want to do. More than you want to absorb the information that's on the paper. More than you want to take the information on the record and put it on the paper. You actually want to absorb it into you. That's what you want to do. And so what I realized is the best way to do that is really through listening, and then transcribing just specific parts that maybe that you don't understand. that is generally my approach to transcribing. I think I've transcribed more time playing than solo playing, actually. And another little transcription tip that I would give is listen to the different parts of the drum kit. Like, for example, if you're transcribing something fast and it's hard to really, write. It's anyway, even if it's slow, it's going to be hard to write it down without going back. I would transcribe it. I would only be able to write down one note at a time or two notes at a time before I had to go back with back in the day, I think I rewound an audio tape or maybe a CD. But what you can do is listen for each different component of the drum set. So, for example, I might go through something where I transcribe the time, like I transcribed some Roy Haynes time on that We See record, the Phineas Newborn. I think it's with Phineas and Roy Haynes and Paul Chambers. Can't remember the bass player. Anyway, the idea is that you go through it just listening for the ride cymbal first, and you write down the ride cymbal. Then you listen for the snare drum. Then you listen for the bass drum. So you're actually kind of dividing up the sounds. Sometimes that's easier, the hi-hat as well. And then you might actually have to do that with the toms as well, or different cymbals, because a lot of times drummers will play two cymbals. What does the other cymbal sound like? So if you hear one, you're really listening out for it at first. So those are a couple of transcription tips that I would give you. But transcribing is a great resource. I recommend it, but it's not really a substitute for listening. Listening is the best transcription. It's the best way to transcribe. Listening to the same thing over and over and over again. If you listen to something as many times as it would take you to transcribe it, you're actually absorbing that information right away, and you don't even have to to learn to play it right away. You're absorbing it because you know it, because you'll learn to know it after listening to it that many times. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm gonna go on here. Let's see. Wyatt, what's up? Let's see. Oh, right. Amazing slow down machine, I think it's called. That's something that that's been around for a long time. And I know that it works. It's free, I think. And you can definitely, the amazing here it's called Amazing Slow Downer, but I think it's Amazing Slowing Down Machine or something like that. Anyway, definitely that can be handy. You can slow it down to half tempo, and then you could also slow it down not quite as much, just enough. And it generally doesn't change the sound of the drums and cymbals as well. So I'm going to read Wyatt's question here. Can you talk about soloing? How do you compose a solo that stays intact? What kind of mental adjustments take place? What do you listen for? How do you respond to your own ideas authentically? Cool. Well, that's a great question, and that's actually something that I think about a lot. So Wyatt, I believe there is some materials that I can kind of point you towards before I kind of go into a huge thing about that. First of all, it's important that you know that I'm not composing a solo. I've never composed a solo. I've improvised a solo, which means that I'm composing it in time. So I'm not coming up with it beforehand. I'm really just improvising it. I want it to sound like it's composed, of course, but I've never actually composed something and memorized it or written it down and then played it later. I almost did it one time, and then I realized that was against my religion. So I didn't want to do that because I thought it was cheap, and I really wanted to be in the moment. And I felt like, writing out a solo would be just kind of cheating. And so I didn't want to do that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, because I think that could be valuable. So the things I would point you to is, there's something called melodic drumming. That's a resource that I would definitely recommend. It's a video of mine that I made a few years ago, and it talks about that specifically, about how I think about soloing as in different ways. One way is over a form of a song form or standard form, and one way would be just a free solo. One thing could be like a free improvisation, or coming up with a song that is sounds like a composition but is actually just an improvisation. The one thing that I would say here about that is like the one rule that I follow, when you're talking about mental adjustments, and what I do is I follow this one rule, which is repeat the very first thing you play. And that actually takes me really far, because it cuts out this whole desire to come up with like a really hip idea. I'm not going to come up with a really hip idea. The only way that I'm going to make any idea sound good is if I repeat that idea right away. So repeat the very first thing you play. Once I repeat that thing, then I've really established a theme. Then you're really in. You're into something. You have something to go from. And so then it talks about, like, then the point is like, what do you do with it at that point? How do you develop that once you have repeated your theme? So how do I respond to my own ideas? The idea here is that I'm taking the theme that I've already repeated, and I'm going to develop it somehow, right? Theme and development. That's really my MO. I mean, I want to create a theme and develop it. And actually, I want to develop that theme for as long as I possibly can without dropping the theme and going on to something else. And then even if I did drop the theme and go on to another theme, I would want to come back to the original theme at some point in that improvisation, whether it be in the middle or whether it be at the end. But I would want to keep that theme in my head and return to it at some point, because that's what music is about, keeping the theme and coming back to it. But as far as developing it, all I would do is, even after I've repeated it, I would want to play something that's still very related to the original theme, but not an exact copy, not an exact repetition. So what I would do is I would change something about it. For example, if I was going to play. Now I'm changing it. So really all that was all just stemming from this one idea. And so I changed, I played it in some different ways. I played it on the snare. I played it on the small, on the toms, excuse me, on the bass drum. I added something at the end of the phrase. And then I think I instead of what I played in the bass drum, I played it on the toms as well. So playing it on different sound sources, on different different instruments, can also be a way that you can develop something that instead of repeating it exactly, you can take the same rhythm and develop it. So anyway, there's some information on this also in Patreon, and maybe Viv can look through that as well. I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but there is a video or two that really deal with improvising in a compositional way. There might be something that's talked about that has a title like that. So check that out. So hopefully that was helpful, Wyatt. Thank you for the question, and I'm going to keep reading here. Boy, I wish I could see everybody, but I know you're there. I'm feeling your presence. That's good. So, hi, Lorenzo. I'm seeing your question here. I'm studying your systems book. The use of metronome or displaced metronome can be helpful. Yeah, I use that a lot. And that's when I'm practicing time, I'll put on the metronome and I'll put it on different parts of the beat. Exactly what you're saying here. Um, yeah. Raphael, did you say something before? You said hi, everyone. Okay. Can you explain how you practice the metrical stuff once you get it? How you use it in a musical way? So, I get that question a lot, and I usually am getting that question from people who have wanting to skip ahead that haven't gotten it yet, and in other words, they haven't gotten it in their heads yet. They haven't mastered it in here. They haven't memorized the way that these rhythms sound over a form. So once you really do master that, Raphael, actually applying it on the drums is going to be easy for you. That's the easy part. The harder part is actually memorizing and understanding the sound. The muscle memory of it is easy as well. It's like how to play it, how to put it onto the drums. Not so difficult, but what is more difficult is really how to hear it, and how to recognize it when you hear other people play it. That's really where you want to be concentrating on. It's like language, it's like I don't know if any of you have ever watched a baby learn to talk, but the way they do it is they're just aware of the different sounds that they hear every day, right? And then what I noticed with my kids is that at night, that when they're going to be like 1 years old ish in that area, right? They're just laying in their crib and you hear them sounding out words that you said at some point, that day, and they don't know what they mean. They're just sounding them out. The meaning comes later. So just getting comfortable with sound and how to replace and how to, make that sound is the first step. So that's really what you want to do. You want to master the sounds first. You want to master how they feel over 8-bar phrases, over forms of tunes. The whole thing with rhythm training. Just get on that, and then how to apply them on the drums is kind of like the last step and the easiest step, because it's taking words that you already know and you just start using them in sentences. But that's going to happen naturally and organically. I can give you tons of examples how to do it, but you're going to also be coming up with tons of your own too. If you want to look into that even farther, I would recommend a couple books that I have called. The first one's called Metric Modulations. No, it's called Polyrhythms: Expanding and Contracting Time Within Form. And then there's a second volume, which is called Metric Modulations. They're pretty old, but they are quite advanced. And I don't recommend them to most people, because what I would recommend is rhythm training, going through that whole thing first. That's the key. And then once you really can get that, then you can jump to those books and see how I might voice them, how I might play these rhythms on the drums, and how they relate to a song and to a bass line. And that's what those books are about. So thanks for the question, though. Really good question. Let's see. Cool. Getting some good participation here. How do I go about selecting bandmates for my own project? Thanks, Earl. So I listen mainly for three things when I'm thinking about who I want to play with. I'm listening for, the first thing is really just like somebody that has good time and a good feel. And if for example, like a bass player or a piano player, a guitarist or whatever, if they have a generally a solid feel, just a good feel and good solid time, I'm gonna enjoy making music with them. It's not necessarily it's not the end all thing, but that's going to be the start, right? So after that, I listen for like if they have a unique approach to their instrument, to what they play, to their vocabulary. And I really like playing with people who sound like themselves, and who really who I can say, oh, that's that person or that's that person. That's unique players, and I feel like that adds to some sort of an artistic vision. And then the third thing would be, how well they understand me and my language and what I do. And so that's that's something that it's kind of icing on the cake at that point. How do you understand me? Do you understand what I'm playing? If I'm playing over a form of a song, do you know where you are? Do I have to cue you back with an obvious melody? So those are things that I look for when I'm choosing who I want to play with. But thanks, that's a great question. Connor, let's see. Rhythmic motive, or do you compose more from a rhythmic motive or motif or a harmonic or melodic, or is it all the above? That's a great question. That's something that I talk about pretty often, actually, when I'm talking about composition. But it depends, actually. I've composed with all those things first. And I think most often I actually end up composing with a harmony first, at least these days. But there are plenty of tunes that have like a rhythmic idea coming kind of first, and there is even like a couple, maybe one or two songs with a melody that came first. But that's actually much more rare for me. I don't know why, but usually the melody ends up kind of fitting in with everything else later, or the melody is just kind of fitting with the harmony. It's usually the top voicing that I'm playing on the piano, and that just becomes the melody. So, most of the tunes I'm writing are things that I hear anyway, but there's a few tunes that I've written much more kind of complex, intricate melodies within, a certain amount of time that I wouldn't be able to play then, or probably will never be able to play some of those melodies. So all the above, Connor. Let's see. Corey, how do you do repetition motive with respect to the melody? So, when I'm improvising, my improvisations come from three places. They come from either the melody. I say my inspiration of whatever I play comes from three possible places. One of them is the melody. So that means that I'm hearing the melody in my head. While I'm hearing the melody, I'm coming up with something to play that either goes with the melody or goes against the melody or melody. But in any case, it's very respectful of the melody, and it's because of the melody. So that's where the inspiration, the idea comes from, the melody. It doesn't mean that I'm necessarily playing the melody note for note, but I'm playing something that I feel goes with the melody for whatever reason that I feel it does. Fed Boss. Let's see. What's it like playing with Wayne Krantz? What skills do you need to have to play and improvise with him? So I love playing Wayne Krantz. I feel like he's one of the very few people that I play with that really challenges my time, and he has such strong time that it makes what I play. It's like playing with a click. Not that his time is like a click necessarily, but what I mean is that when I'm playing with him, if I do something that's rushy or dragging, it's much more obvious because his time is so strong. So obviously challenges me to listen to him. And I mean, his time is probably some of the best of anybody that I play with, I would say. So it's a challenge in that way. Otherwise, just keeping 8-bar phrases, that's not as much of a challenge for me because I'm kind of into that and into playing rhythmic ideas around that. It's so open, the improvisation sections are so open that creating something different in all those spaces is also a good challenge. Another real challenge playing with Wayne is the physicality of it, actually, because I've never done a gig before that I felt like I couldn't get enough volume, especially from the bass drum. So that's something that that I've had to kind of work on. When I play with him, generally the drums are not mic'd. It depends where. If we're playing like a festival or something like that, they're going to be mic'd. But a lot of the gigs we do is at 55 bar, so there's no miking. Nothing's being mic'd at that point. So that's just a little bit about him. Let's see. Do I envision anything when you play drums or music in general? Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I have like visual things that kind of go around in my head. It really does kind of depend time to time. It could be anything from like a graph, graph paper. If I'm really thinking about very specifically about time and rhythm, then I might almost visualize it in a graph. But I also can visualize something much more abstract, like a painting, and try to really play more of a feeling that I get from from that experience, and that could also be really valuable. I think it definitely depends, but for the latter, visualizing a painting or visualizing something else, I usually would more kind of decide ahead of time that I'm going to do that. It wouldn't necessarily happen automatically, but something would happen automatically if I just start playing and whatever I'm feeling at the time. But I go more through emotions, and I play more from emotions that I'm feeling more than things that I'm seeing. Bruno, wow, so glad we got a lot of people here. Thank you guys for paying attention here, for logging on. That's really great. Hello, can you suggest some straight jazz standards to practice odd groups over form, and how you practice these odd rhythms on drums? So, this kind of goes with that last question, which is how do you apply this stuff on the drums? You don't right now. You're going to want to master them clapping and singing. It's the same thing. It goes back to the rhythm training stuff. Goes back to the video I have that's called Mastering Odd Times, which is basically rhythm training, but in odd times. And so once you really can get a good handle on that stuff, you're going to see, ways that you're going to come up with ways to apply it to the drums. There are also a lot of things on Patreon about how I apply different groupings to the drums, or how one might apply, grouping of 5 or grouping 7, or I think there's a lot of that stuff there, but there's no reason why you can't come up with your own. It's kind of like saying, how do you apply a grouping of 4 to the drums? There's so many possibilities that, you really want to hear the rhythm, hear the time strongly at first, and then you're going to come up with your own ways. Can you suggest some straight jazz standards? Yeah, sure. How about, well, Alone Together is the one that everybody's talking about right now. Although it's not your typical 32 bar form, but it's a good standard. Stella by Starlight. I particularly kind of like Monk tunes and Bill Evans tunes, and Train tunes. Bebop tunes like Mr. PC or Now Bird. Now Is the Time. You can check out like Tenor Madness, Autumn Leaves. Start with some of those songs. All right, let's see. When is it appropriate to imply metric modulation? Also, who is it appropriate to use it with? So, just a sec here. I think that for that, it really depends on what else is happening on the bandstand. So like for me, again, what I play is coming from the inspiration of what I play is always coming from either the song, or for something that I've already played in the song, or something that one of my bandmates has played in the song. So generally, when it's appropriate for me is when it fits the song, or it fits what has been played or improvised already in the song. In order to to have a good choice, to have enough vocabulary to choose from, it is important though that that you practice different things first. So for example, if you practice a lick that you displace that, you play it different ways to be able to be prepared for responding in the most musical way that you can. So that hopefully answers that question. Let's see. We got about 4 more minutes. If I can't get to your question, we will do this again. But I definitely appreciate everybody tuning in here. Daniel asks, has being in the moment while making music ever needed some work from you? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. What thoughts could you share about being in the right mind space when making music, where creativity best flows? So, that's a really good question. It's interesting. I have gone through certain times where, you know, where I feel like I am in the moment or I can be in the moment. And I should say that most generally, I do feel like I'm only thinking about the music that I'm playing when I'm playing. But I did go through a period, maybe of a few months, where I was kind of distracted, and I kept thinking about other things while I was playing. Um, I I don't exactly know, what to tell you as far as how to access that point that you're really in the music. I call it being in the music, but I will say that the thing that really will get me there if I'm not there is just making myself listen even harder to the other musicians that I'm playing with. Just listen more, listen stronger, listen harder, and try to use what they're playing to kind of get you inside the music. I kind of think of it like, anybody ever play this game as a kid where they take a parachute and then you kind of do this with the parachute with a whole bunch of other kids, and then like some kids like run underneath, and then the parachute is still there, it goes above you, and then you're underneath this parachute, right? You ever play that game? So that's how I think about when I'm playing music. I think about being under a parachute, and everything that's outside of that parachute is non-existent. It doesn't exist anymore. The only things that exist are the things that are in the parachute, and so, or within or inside. And that's how I think about when I'm playing music too. The only things that are really existing right now are inside this musical parachute, and it has boundaries. So there is no, oh, it's Thursday and I have to do my laundry on Thursdays. Nothing's like, everything is just within the musical boundaries. But that's a good question. That has a lot to do with the magic of music and the magic of improvisation and making music. It's an interesting subject, and we could definitely talk about it for a long time. I'm going to do one more question here. Thomas, hey Ari, what are your practice sessions like? How do you organize your practice sessions in relation to long and short-term musical goals? Well, I think it's good to have long-term and short-term musical goals. If you have them, especially if you write them down, it can be really helpful, writing down those goals. And then, pretty much everything is I'm thinking about short-term goals more than long-term goals. My long-term goals are written. I write them out. Maybe I'm going to, put them, I don't know, email them to myself in a year and see where I'm at, something like that. But I think the important thing about practice sessions is repeating what you did yesterday. I'm going to practice today. I'm going to repeat, and I'm going to practice the same thing as I practiced yesterday. And maybe I'm going to move forward or develop something more with it today. And then tomorrow when I practice, I'm going to practice the same thing tomorrow that I practiced today. And you want to continue on that, so you have that continuity, and that's the way that you're really going to get better. Practicing is about repeating, but it's not just repeating, exactly. You're gonna grow as well, but it needs repetition. If you practice Monday through Friday, different things every day, and you don't practice the same things any of those days, you won't retain that information. And it's all about the retention. It's all about retaining. So it's it can be a grind, but it's a fun grind. So I would try to use those tips. So thank you guys. I'm sorry I couldn't get to every single question, but we will do it again. And don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always around, always happy to hear from you. If you have questions about the videos, please comment, and anything you want to say, post pictures of your cat, whatever. I don't care. We're all in this thing together. And I really appreciate all the support coming from everybody out there, especially now. So I'll give you a little peek at what New York looks like now. I got a little window in my basement. It's kind of sunny though. Can you see? Not a good. No, there's a car. So stay safe, everybody. Happy drumming, and thank you all for being here. Thank you for the questions, and thank you most of all for being a member. And love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya.